Welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly. I'm Aaron Porras, and this is the program where we discuss the latest in Israel's geopolitical developments. Our topics tonight include a large new approval of housing units in the West Bank and new initiatives to deport asylum seekers and refugees. My guests today in the studio are co-director of the Peace Now organization's Settlement Watch Project, Hagit Ofran, executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman, senior researcher with the Israel Institute for Security Studies, Brigadier General Dr. Meir Elran, and former head of Israeli Air Force Intelligence and chairman of HaShomer HaChadash, Brigadier General Ram Shmueli. Thank you all very much for coming in. Now, to begin, our Israeli civil administration has now approved 1,122 new housing units across 20 different settlements and outposts in the West Bank. According to Defense Minister Lieberman, the committee was also scheduled to advance another 2,500 units for the future. The UK, the EU, the Palestinians, and several others have condemned the approval as standing in the way of peace.
This announcement yesterday by the Higher Planning Committee to approve 1,122 new settlement housing units in the West Bank and 651 tenders represents either the government's clear disregard for a two-state solution or an attempt to explicitly undermine it. By building in the settlements, this further erodes the possibility of a Palestinian state that has a certain degree of territorial integrity, and at the same time, it makes it more difficult for Israel to finally disentangle from the Palestinians in a two-state solution.
האישור של יחידות בכל רחבי שומרון, בנימין ויהודה, זאת התשובה הכי חזקה והכי נכונה למרצחים ולטרוריסטים שפועלים פה בכל רחבי מדינת ישראל. אנחנו צריכים לגדול מיישובים קטנים, להכפיל את עצמנו, ובעזרת השם לא יזיזו אותנו מפה. זו האדמה שלנו, אנחנו אוהבים אותה, אנחנו פה.
All right, now Brigadier General Elran, I'm going to start with you.
Please do.
With nearly 700 tenders well over the green line, what kind of security risks does that pose?
First of all, I'd like to suggest to our audience not to take too seriously the numbers that we have heard here. I mean, it has been proven time and again that those numbers are thrown mostly for domestic consumption, and there is a huge gap between what is being announced or what is being decided and to the practical steps that are being taken in fact. So this is one thing that we have to take into consideration.
So do you say that the actual number is less or more?
Is much less, even though, and having said that, it's true that this is the policy of this government, and these governments, of the right-wing governments, to introduce more and more settlements and to expand the settlements in the occupied territories. There's no doubt about it. This is their policy. So when you talk about it, but this has nothing to do with the issue of security, because this notion that supposedly settlements in general and increasing the numbers of settlements in the West Bank are a means to enhance security. It has
not necessarily to enhance, but just
to keep
what
security.
Are the dangers that kind of?
There is no relation between the settlements and the issue of security.
Well,
just one second, please. Just one second, Martin. If you want me to stop now, this is the time that the chairman will tell me to stop, and I'm willing to stop. Shall I stop?
No, please continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, it has nothing to do with security. It has to do with domestic policies and with the overall strategy of the different governments in Israel, especially the right-wing governments, and especially nowadays. They want to expand the presence because they want to keep the West Bank as part of Israel, okay? And that's why they do it. And they take advantage of the horrific issues of the horrific cases of terrorism to enhance this kind of a policy. 50 years of our occupation in the West Bank has not shown even once that increasing the settlements enhances security. This is a simple thing to be learned from 50 years of history.
Sure. All right.
Well, first of all, we have a stark example of what happened in Gaza when we removed the settlements, how our security suddenly increased. And I've said this on a few programs, the only reason for not increasing settlements in Judea and Samaria is to keep open the option of establishing yet another mega Gaza overlooking Tel Aviv and Ben Gurion Airport, to set up another homophobic, misogynistic, Muslim majority tyranny. Why would anyone want to do that? And you know, the debate on settlements has become so insane. Just allow me two short quotes, and then we'll ask who actually said this.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm not able to be with you, as I would have wished, to share your joy at the Brit Milah, the circumcision ceremony of your son, at the first child of the restorers of the Jewish settlement, heaven forfend, in Hebron. I wish you all, the parents and the entire tribe of settlers, great blessing and joy in raising your son, bringing your son into the covenant of the patriarch Abraham, in the city of Abraham, after 40 years of separation from it, has special symbolic significance.
So,
it bears testimony to our
so
continuous...
who wrote that?
It bears testimony to our continuous connection to this place, to which we have returned never to leave. Who said that?
Some Labour Party
Yigal
leader.
Allon, the iconic moderate of the Labour Party. One more quote. We need to create a continuous stretch of new settlements to bolster Jerusalem and surrounding hills from the north, from the east, from the south and from the west, by means of the establishments of townships, suburbs and villages, Malea, Dumim, Ofra, Gilo, Bet El, Givon, to ensure that the capital and its flanks are secured and underpinned by urban and rural settlements. These settlements will be connected to the coastal plain and the Jordan Valley by new lateral axes. The settlements along the Jordan River are intended to establish the Jordan River as Israel's de
Is that
facto
Allon again?
Who said that?
Huh?
Is that Allon again?
No.
Rabin?
No.
Whoever?
That was Shimon Peres.
Wow.
The year he was
Really?
the year he was Minister of Defense in 1977.
Really?
So the whole debate has become totally distorted. And Henry Kissinger was almost right.
Maybe it was
Henry
distorted
Kissinger was-
at the time because they were
Henry-
blind to see the facts.
We've seen how splendidly the policy of trying
Well,
to foist statehood
Well,
on the
let's-
Palestinians has worked. Thousands of
Well, let's
people have
explore
paid
that a
for
little
their
bit
life
more.
and limb.
Hagit, what
When
do
are
you
you going
mean?
to stop with this
What facts-
insane experiment?
What facts do you think we're being
the
exploited?
experiment that we are living is the 50 years of ongoing occupation, which is not bringing us any peace.
For a quarter of a
The-
century, there hasn't been any
the-
occupation.
The construction of settlements is against the Israeli interest because our interest is to stop the occupation. The occupation is bad morally and it's bad for our security and it must end. And the fact that our government is continuing to build more and more settlements and to expand it, it's undermining the chances to have peace. Even if you don't believe you can have peace,
that kind of brought me-
don't destroy the possibility to have
Well,
it.
this kind of brings me back to kind of the intention behind my first question, which was less so about the increased security that we will gain from expanding settlements, but more so what challenges to our security apparatus are posed by extending the population that's in the West Bank and over the Green Line. Han?
First of all, I disagree with my partners. This is not an occupied territories. Those are dispute territories. And it is a dispute way how we are going to solve the discussion with the Palestinian, which is a national inter-fighting for the last 100 years. And for our audience from abroad, I want to tell you that no Europe country, those are shouting at us that something is happening between the Israeli and Palestinian, we have to solve it because this is the problem. I haven't saw those European countries trying to promote any kind of solving the problem of Iran conquer the Middle East. They took Iraq, they are taking now Syria, they control south of Lebanon, and of course they put some money to Hamas in Gaza in order to destabilize this area. And no country in Europe are promoting any kind of a program or critique or UN resolution about it because they are eager to say the Israelis are occupied and they are going to make all those problems in the Middle East. It's a naive way of seeing what's happening in the Middle East. So I disagree, and I disagree with my partner, Eitan, that nobody he said that nobody see that this is a security issue when there are settlements. Please show me papers about that this is against security issues.
Oh, they are.
I haven't seen them,
Okay.
and I've seen them about Gaza Strip and about the Galilee. And it's a national dispute between two nations. and those two nations are striking to have their intention of national intentions, and no Europe country will take this uncountable regime of the Palestinian Authority. No European country will take them to be control on their borders, because this is not an accountable partners, and this is a dangerous way to display it.
So let me kind of take an extension from that. If we've recently heard that just in December, attacks in the West Bank have tripled to well over 250. That people in the West Bank are very upset, and yet they haven't been. The Palestinian Authority has not been at the negotiating table for years. So how do you respond to Brigadier General Ram Shmueli's saying that this is it's not occupied territory, it's disputed, and with the Palestinians not coming to the negotiating table, what is their argument?
First of all, regardless of what the Palestinians do and how nice they are, the fact is, if you don't want to call it occupied, you can call it, I don't mind what, disputed. The fact is that we control those territories.
Imagine an alternative.
And that the Palestinians who live there have no equal rights or civil rights in our country, the country that is controlling them, okay? So that's what I call occupation. I don't mind if you call it disputed. The fact is that we control their lives. This is something that is, from a Jewish perspective, is a disaster, that the Jewish country, that the only Jewish country that we finally have is treating our neighbors the way we are treating them, and this is something that should be stopped. And in addition to that, the fact is that the security of Israel is not doing so well with ongoing occupation. The way to
You owe your life to those people who control my son and maybe you.
Of course, I owe their life.
Because the way they behave in the Middle East, in the West Bank, this is the way to prevent any kind of attack.
This is the way to prevent the attacks on Israel, because we are there. But if Israel would have had an agreement with the Palestinians of a Palestinian state, a Palestinian state side by side with Israel, with the PLO, then the army, the Israeli army would have been able to defend ourselves. Is like what we did in Sinai and like what we did in Lebanon. And if there is a threat from a neighboring country, we should be able to defend ourselves. I'm not saying that we should dismantle our army.
Are you suggesting turning Netanyahu into Sderot?
Okay, let's.
Do you suggest that the Palestinians don't live there?
No, yes. By the way, yes.
They are there. What can you do?
When you call our neighbors, they're not our neighbors, they're our enemies.
They can be our neighbors and enemies at the same time.
Precisely.
The same way as we can be occupying it and dispute it. So let's not play with words. Let me just suggest one thing for our memory, since some of us are older than the others here. Years back, we had a major problem with the Egyptians, okay? The Nasser, if you remember, and the others were our arch enemies, okay? They caused huge trouble and actually put our country and our security in jeopardy for many, many years, okay? And then, okay, and we had wars, etc. You remember Yom Kippur War, etc., etc. With the damage to the population and to the military, etc., etc. What happened was that we understood, and it was Menachem Begin who understood, okay, that the only way to deal with your neighbors or with your disputed neighbors on the disputed territories is to go into peace with them.
So moving on, the Israeli leadership is again coming under fire as a plan to deport asylum seekers and refugees has been announced. Seeking to rid the country of the roughly 40,000 migrants, a program has been outlined. Prime Minister Netanyahu has offered a choice between a small payout and a one-way ticket to Rwanda, or indefinite detention while the asylum request is processed. In addition, a call to 140 ordinary citizens has been made to join a new temporary unit that would track the asylum applications and monitor migrants' movements in the country.
למסתננים יש ברירה פשוטה, לשתף איתנו פעולה ולצאת מרצון בדרך מכובדת, בדרך אנושית ובדרך חוקית, או כמובן נצטרך להפעיל את הכלים האחרים העומדים לרשותנו, גם הם לפי החוק. אני מקווה שיבחרו לשתף איתנו פעולה.
Israel's plan to send 38,000 asylum seekers to Rwanda against their will is completely inappropriate for a democratic country that is a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention. The government is telling asylum seekers now that they have two options before them: to be deported to Rwanda or to enter detention for an indefinite period. This is not a real choice. All of our research shows that those who've been deported to Rwanda's lives have been seriously in danger.
If they reject me, it's better for me to wait in prison than to go to Rwanda, because I don't know what is in Rwanda waiting for me. Even though we, as asylum seeker, as the government, to tell us what is the deal in Rwanda. We don't know nothing about Rwanda. But what I know, a lot of people live in this country, they took their documents from them when they are arriving in the airport. So they are smuggling them to other countries. Nobody is staying in Rwanda. That's what I know.
So one of the major arguments against having these people here is simply that, you know, it poses a risk to the country, to the identity of the country. What is Israel so afraid of having these, you know, quote unquote infiltrators here?
This is, as always, this is a confrontation between values, and especially Jewish values. First of all, if there are people who are refugees and are looking for a safe place, we as a Jewish people have to think, what should we do? The second value is the Jewish state. We need here a Jewish state. This is why we wait for 2,000 years, and now we have to safeguard it. And third is those people who come, what should they do when they go back to their countries. And another thing is when they are in Israel, what happened to the society, the weak society of Israel, the weak society in the southern part of Tel Aviv. So this kind of collision of values, what I suggest, I think that we made many mistakes. First of all, we have an open border. Luckily, we don't have it anymore. We have a fence. So this one mistake, we fix it. But the other mistake is that we can't take there tens of thousands of people. But on the other hand, we have to find a solution to be part of the whole world to help the refugees from Africa to find a safeguard in proportion. If you put the proportion between us and the US, we have to take a couple of thousand every year and to make a program to absorb them. I'm talking about small portion, like Germany will take part, a United States, and all of those. And this is something that we haven't done. We just get this wave of immigration. We haven't counted about the people, the weak people in South Tel Aviv, and now we're trying to deport them out of Israel, and we put them in jungle in Africa. All of this is wrong. Let's find a program that will find a way to be part of the world, to help those people. We can't help many thousand. We have, every year we will be part. We'll take a program and we'll rehabilitate them, maybe in Israel.
So again,
and
what
maybe
are the issues involved in absorbing 40 to 50,000 migrants?
Okay, again, two remarks. The first one, very similar to the one that I made at the beginning of the first half of our discussion here. When we talk about numbers, our government has this tendency to throw numbers on the table, even though those numbers are just superfluous and have nothing to do with the reality. So there is no way for us to expel or to send away or to whatever, you know, to 40,000 people, at least not in the foreseeable future. This is number one. Number two, I totally respect and accept what Trump just said about the issue of values. Okay, we have to remember that first and foremost, we are Jews, and we know exactly what happened to people who were under stress and were looking for asylum and were rejected, and we hated it, and rightfully so. So we have to remember that right now we are the stronger part. Fortunately, we have our own country, we have our prosperity, we have our economy, and we can accommodate them, okay? Not only that, but also we need them. Our economy needs them, but that's another issue. Okay, so I agree completely with what Ram said. In light of us being Jews and we have our Jewish values, we have to see what we can do about those people. 40,000 people is nothing compared with the needs of the Israeli economy. Some of them can go out if they wish. We can help them. Right. We should help them. But if they do not leave, we have to disperse them and find the right thing for them and for our own economy.
Okay, so let's stick on the idea of values then. Where do the Jewish values begin and end when it comes to migrants and asylum seekers who are non-Jewish and they come to our border?
First of all, I'm speaking here as Chagit and not as Peace Now, because not Peace Now matter. But I think it's not that Israel should be open for everybody with like a free ticket, but we are strong enough to observe much more than a couple of thousand a year, and we should take responsibility, especially for those who are already here in Israel. We cannot allow such a policy that kicks them out of our country to be killed in Africa. It's impossible, and I really hope that it's just words, like you said, that it won't be implemented.
Well, in principle, this is probably the first program where there's been almost a complete agreement around the table, because I endorse what Ram said. I think there has to be a clear difference between the ex-ante and the ex-post. I think Israel was a bit slow in closing its border. I think that it should have closed it more quickly. I think there's a serious moral dilemma to deport people, especially with the pittance that they're given, the money, $3,000 or something, was a joke. I mean, I'm for incentivized immigration with the Palestinians, but for some far greater than 100 times greater than what they're giving the African migrants. But we have to be, as Chagit said, we can't allow Jewish values to de-Judaize the Jewish state, because the main source of migrants is from Sudan and Eritrea. That's a population of almost 40 million people. So if you were to absorb only 0.5%, that would be close to half a million migrants. Obviously, Israel can't do that. But it could say, instead of setting up a detention center in Cholot, it could have set up a training center or a rehabilitation center or integration center, giving them skills that they could be integrated. And it was a mistake to allow them to gravitate to the poor suburbs of South Tel Aviv. Because I'm sure if they'd allowed them...
That wasn't their choice in the first place.
But
that was
whose
in large
choice?
part. The migrants, that was not their choice.
I'm pointing a finger here at the Israeli government. Because if they settled them in Ramat Aviv or Rochavia, the upmarket suburbs in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, the problem would have been solved long ago.
The only thing that I disagree with Eitan is about the need of the Israeli economy. The Israeli economy, unlike European countries that they have lack of birth and young generation, we don't have this kind of problem, and we always can open the border to our neighbors, the Palestinian workers. So this is not an economy solution for us. This is only a humanitarian challenge for Israel, and Israel have to manage this kind of event and what's happening in the world and be part of the world as we believe about our Jewish values. But to our audience from abroad, I want to emphasize, we wait for 2,000 years to this time that luckily we have our Jewish state. There is only one Jewish state. Some of those, all of those immigrants are not Jewish.
Right.
And we are not the country that can solve all the problem. We're doing our share, and we should do it much more in order. But this is not the solution. This is the Jewish state. We wait for 2,000 years. We finally made it, and now we have to keep the rules and the way to keep the safeguard of the Jewish state in the world.
All right. Well, I think that's a good time to finish. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today for this edition of ILTV's Israel Weekly. Thanks again very, very much to our guests. Thank you so much for coming in, and thanks to all for you out there for tuning in. See you next week, and shalom from Israel.